Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Historical Humans Reacts. And on today's episode, we have one of the most American things ever, where the oldest U.S. firearm is unearthed in Arizona. But the best part is, and arguably the most American part about it, is it's not even American. It is a Spanish colonial cannon.
Yeah,
Oh, beautiful.
yeah, that's quite a bit to unpack there. But basically, before the good old U.S. of A. was existing, um, there were these people in the New World called the Spanish, and they had decided that everything the sun touched would one day be theirs.
Oh no.
So, um, like Zimba before them, they just started marching all over what we understand to be North and South America today. Uh,
Which, to their credit, some of their early expeditions give us the earliest maps of the area, and they did a good job. It's just part of what Spain did was when they first touched down, they heard these stories and tales of cities of gold. So they really, really wanted to find it. And one of the things that they did, which I actually think is kind of neat and interesting, is they followed a lot of native trade routes, a lot of indigenous trade routes that had sprawled across the country, and they explored it. And the conquistador that's linked with this cannon is Vasquez de Coronado, who ended up going from the American Southwest all the way up to Kansas.
yep.
So he made quite the trek through a lot of desert terrain, and contemporaneously to that was also when Hernando de Soto was traveling from Florida up to Arkansas, Mississippi. So they were only a couple hundred miles apart, but I guarantee they felt worlds apart.
Yep. Yeah, and this object that we've got here is, I believe, from his expedition, his which lasted from 1539 to 1542. It is what is known as a wall cannon. It is a hmm, it's sort of small portable garrison device. You basically are able to just sort of pop this onto a wall and start firing with relative ease, especially considering that most firearms at that time were, the size of a tree.
And a lot of this actually stemmed because of the reports that came out of Spain at the time that showed a lot of wealth in these cities north of Mexico, and that had all these great tales and stories that preceded them. So it was part treasure hunt, but also, to a lot of degrees, this was a business venture. And Coronado heard about these and really thought he could make his money back. So he mortgaged his wife's possessions and borrowed heavily. Because, again, nothing more American than leveraging every physical possession in your ownership to try and finance a hunt for gold. And he went looking for these legendary cities that he heard stories of in hopes of stealing gold and precious stones, claiming the land for the crown of Spain, naturally, and enslaving large portions of the population for forced labor.
Yep. And
Truly an
amid all that
outstanding
horrible things,
businessman.
yeah, we're actually going to talk about the smart business sense that he did have. Because as much as we know as logical people that El Dorado is a pipe dream, he did not. He actually made some smart financial decisions that we see here with the presence of this particular cannon. Because as you look at the image, you notice it's completely unadorned, which means that it was locally made. Cannons made in Spain were known to be highly decorative because they were seen less as tools for a rather dirty job of fighting people and more as prestige items to decorate your walls with.
And it blows my mind because obviously we know about it now that it's a tale, it's not a real city, but he believed it was accurate and believed these stories. So he took 150 mounted soldiers, 200 infantrymen, and hundreds of other natives that would help him out, And they would eventually find nothing but disappointment when they reached the Great Plains of Kansas. And instead of finding the large populations or these riches, they just looted blankets and pottery from the Pueblo communities in the Southwest.
Yep. And honestly, this cannon, the context it was found in, really speaks to that because this cannon was found, I believe, in the floor of a house surrounded by lead shots and a very distinctive arrowhead made by the Sobapuri people, indicating that this thing saw combat.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't made for decoration, but yeah, they did do it. And these cannons required two people to work at, and they would basically use them as an offensive weapon to breach any sort of wooden encampment or walls, or even adobe walls. So they would just blast through, and the cannon itself was 42 inches long and weighed about 40 pounds. And they
Yeah.
would use makeshift wooden tripods to try and hold it. And it's just kind of interesting. And they believe that it was cast in Mexico or the Caribbean because of the lack of decoration. But they had actually used a pretty clever technique that had been around for a long time, where they used sand cast and three sprue marks along the bottom axis shows where it was cast. So they would basically make these molds out of sand, tamp the sand down as much as possible, create this mold, and then just pour in molten bronze to cast it.
Yep. And, yep. The only thing that's missing is we must now go to this gun and chisel into the side of it, made in America. Because it was made somewhere in the Americas. And, that I feel is one of the most significant parts of this expedition and of this artifact is that it was made by the Spanish in America for Spanish expansion in America. They
Well-
fully moved their operations to locally sourced.
Well, and the thing is, not only was it quote unquote locally crafted in the Caribbean, but it was also potentially purchased from another Spanish conquistador, because we're just listing them all off at this point, Ponce de Leon. So it's kind of interesting to see second-hand cannons being used and being brought, but it was found unloaded and doesn't actually show any signs of use in battle, which kind of raises some questions of why did they leave it behind.
Yep. Especially when they left it behind surrounded by arrowheads and bullets. It's like, my best guess is they got shot at, they dropped the cannon, they dropped the ammo, they ran like hell.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously exchanged some sort of fire if they were surrounded by lead shot, but what a battle. And that's one of the things that really kind of highlights the environment that they were in of while they had native scouts helping them out, not all indigenous communities got along, and not all of them really knew of each other either. So you would see a lot of hostilities coming through here and a lot of arguments that would spawn from this. So it poses a couple of interesting questions of like, obviously they brought it with them on the expedition. Why did it get left behind? Is there other signs of these cannons being repurchased and reused in other expeditions? Was there a blacksmith shop in the Caribbean? Did someone just like land on Puerto Rico and just set up a smithy shop where they're just like, conquistador, okay, time to make another one, time to make more?
Yeah, he's just sitting there going, these idiots, they'll believe anything. You know what? If you go south, there's a mountain of silver.
If you keep going
wait,
north,
that one's real?
if you keep going past the mountain of gold, and if you go just a little bit further beyond that and take a left, you'll end up in the second city of gold, and continue up that way for about 300 miles, and you'll reach El Dorado. And the Spaniards are like, you motherfucker, I'll take 10.
But first, you must pass the Valley of Diamonds.
Oh God, yeah, it really is an interesting thing though, because while we're aware of Spanish expedition and colonialism in North America, I think a lot of people don't quite understand the expanse, because we think a lot of the French or even the British who had settled and mapped out a lot of what we call the United States to this day, but in reality, the Spaniards have been there, and they had been there way earlier than everyone else, because 1539, 1542. That was before British colonization of North America at all.
Yeah. Yeah, no, like the French get a lot of credit for the Hudson and the Mississippi, but the Spanish pretty much did everything for California and Texas all the way down to like Argentina and Chile.
And you say the Mississippi, but the Spaniards had control over the southern portion of the Mississippi for a very long time. It wasn't until I think it was the Treaty of Madrid. I just did a short on it a few weeks ago, but effectively the southern United States, like Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, basically just got traded between Spanish and French colonials until America stepped in and France was like, all right, yeah, you can buy it, whatever, sure.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the French get all the credit because they figured out where that river came from and that you could technically connect it to the Great Lakes. And it's like, wait, you can trade on this thing? And they, all the Native Americans, yes, dumbass.
Well, the French, their colonial mentality was, hey, instead of conquering these people or subjugating them, we'll just marry them. We'll integrate. We'll forcibly integrate. And they did. And their form of colonialism was a lot longer lasting.
Yeah.
But I think that's a great point for us to wrap up. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, let us know down below, and we'll see you in the next one.